The Trans Tasman is coming up this weekend between Australia and New Zealand. So if you don't know what a Trans Tasman is, each time there is a Trans Tasman, it is a 3-game series between the 3 Opens teams, Australia versus New Zealand. So men's, women's, mixed, all play the best of 3 games to decide the winner. Last year, Australia won all 3 divisions, but that was obviously in Australia. It was in Queensland, and this year, New Zealand are the host nation for the Trans Tasman Series. So that raises a little bit of some interesting points from my knowledge. Obviously, this is just going to be my opinion on everything. There's probably a lot of people involved in the campaign that know a lot more than me about this, but TFA just put up a post with some interesting figures that I'd like to talk about. And we don't have the same sort of in-depth stuff from Touch New Zealand, but there is mention in this. So let's have a look, and I do want to talk about my predictions and what I think could happen in particular one division. So let's have a look. So the Trans Tasman Series. So men's, we'll go men's first. So the wins obviously are heavy in Australia's favour. Now, before I get into this, I just want to point out I am an Australian. I am going to be supporting Australia. I will till the day that I die. But I am going to be objectively looking at numbers here and past results and making a non-biased opinion to the best of my ability. So obviously the wins are heavily in Australia's favour. Now this is, I think, 1988 was the first time that they might have played each other. Might have been before that. I could be wrong, but it's numbers since the inception of Australia versus New Zealand. So 47 wins to Australia, 13 New Zealand, total of 60 games. So that's heavy in Australia's favour. But if you look at the tries, it's a lot closer as far as ratio goes than what the wins would be. So it gives you an indication there that the wins by Australia aren't by a huge margin. Not all the time, because you can see there that the 2015 World Cup, like that's online, that's on YouTube, you can watch that video. 11-2 there, but I do know in that World Cup, firstly, it was completely bogged, rain, terrible conditions. It was the worst. It was just that Coffs Harbour got so unlucky with the weather that was given to them for that World Cup. So whether or not that meant Australia was playing more on the stadium field, which was in better condition, I'm not sure. But you watch that game, New Zealand scored the first try, and it was disallowed. You can't tell if it's the correct decision or not on the camera angle, but the pass was ruled forward, but it was a brilliant try. Australia then march up the field straight after that and score their first try. But it gives you like what could have been if the momentum went straight to New Zealand, because that was from the get-go. New Zealand score, it's brought back for a penalty. Australia take the tap very quickly, march up and score the other way. So instead of it being 1-0 to Australia, that momentum could have been towards New Zealand in that game, and we could have seen something completely different. New Zealand's biggest win over Australia, 6-3 at the 2010 Trans Tasman. Now, a point to make out of the 2010 Trans Tasman, I know the teams are there's probably one player in each team that are still there. That was in New Zealand. So New Zealand obviously have had their biggest win on home soil. And their latest result was the 2024 World Cup, where Australia won last year 9-6. But again, I think Australia scored a couple of tries late in the game to extend that margin, because anyone who agrees that game was an epic game at Nottingham. Some outstanding touch was played, but this is just returning to what I said. Now, I don't know as much about Touch New Zealand and the calibre of players that were available, not available to the World Cup. What I do know is Touch Football Australia funded our Opens teams for the first time, I believe, which is a great initiative. You're in the best players in the world. Funded trips. It might have been airfare, whatever. They probably still had to spend spending money, but great initiative from Touch Football Australia to do that, and it meant that our best players were available to participate. I don't know of anyone that made themselves unavailable that would have been picked in the men's open at least. So Australia had their full strength team for the whole week. New Zealand, I know, is further away than England to Australia, so our travel would have been made that just a little bit more difficult. And I have no idea. So if they didn't fund their players like Australia did, does that mean that there would have been a few people that did not go that are in the top 16 men's, women's mixed players that simply just couldn't afford it? So it does raise some questions there, because now the Trans Tasman is back in New Zealand. We know that that's not going to be a problem for these players in New Zealand. It's a home tournament or a home 3-game series. So the teams are only, I think New Zealand are probably less altered as far as their team lists go, but yeah, I'm wondering if those little changes to their team are due to personnel being unavailable at the World Cup, whereas Australia is, it's been form changes, I believe. There's a couple of players that I thought were unlucky to miss out, but obviously the selectors believe that they're not in form because they are still playing. But yeah, that's interesting, men's open. So I do think it's definitely not going to be a 3-0. It's whoever wins. It's not going to be 3-0. And I'm going to go out and say that New Zealand are going to win the first game. I'm not going to say that they're going to win the whole series, but I think they're going to win the first game. Because a lot of those New Zealand players represented in the Maori All-Stars, whereas not a lot of the Australian men's open did. So yeah, I'm going to go first. That's my prediction for the men's, is the first game is going to be a win by New Zealand. And then after that, I'm not sure. Okay, women's open. So women's open, it seems like all the interest with Australia versus New Zealand is in, from what I talk about, is in men's and mixed. So as you can see here, wins 60 for Australia and only 4 for the women's New Zealand. Now I did watch the grand final. Australia won, the gold medal match. We're going down to the bottom one now. The latest result in the 24 World Cup. Australia does win 6-2. I thought New Zealand could have, from what I saw of them in the previous week, I thought that they could have played a bit better than what they did. I think they would have been slightly disappointed in the way they played. I thought Australia were good, but they weren't spectacular. There was a lot of pushing and nervous errors in this game by both teams. But yeah, I watched New Zealand against a couple of other nations, and they were looking very, very good. And yeah, they had a win. Their biggest win's only by 2 points, whereas Australia's by 13. I think my mum might have been in that game in the 1988 World Cup. But yeah, so 4-2. That's the World Cup where it was wet and not nice, so we can't really take that merit. But what I will predict, again, same with the men's, the girls, if they had any players missing because of financial reasons or the fact they couldn't get off work for a whole week, that's not going to be a problem. It's a home final, so I do think they will win at least one of these games. Hopefully it's the first or the second to drive it into a decider. Mixed. Now, mixed is an interesting one. 44 wins to 20. And I will say this, mixed is always closer. It's always more of a nail-biting game than men's or women's. Look at the 24 World Cup final, 8-7 in a drop-off, and I thought this was probably the most unlucky I've ever seen a team in a big game. It looked like New Zealand were about to clinch the game, and one of their boys, as he stepped off his left foot, did his knee, and it looked like there was a big enough gap in front of him to dive and score, so that would have won the game for New Zealand and won the gold medal for New Zealand, but it wasn't to be. So look, again, 2013 Trans Tasman, I think that was actually in New Zealand as well. I did check that. I think I've checked 2013, looks like that. So the mixed are obviously better on home soil. So I think this is the one. Trans Tasman last year, I remember the first game being an absolute epic game. so many tries, and I think it was only 1 point in it. It might have been like 10-9 or something like that. Australia just won in the end, and Australia's mixed team is very different. There's a lot of debutants coming forward. They definitely deserve it. There's no one there in the mixed team that I think doesn't deserve to be there, but it's not as experienced as the side was at the World Cup. And New Zealand, again, I don't think there is as many changes. So with not as many changes, a bit more cohesiveness, or however you want to say it, in the team, plus being on home soil, I'm actually going to tip that New Zealand will win this 2-1. Yeah, I think it's a big advantage to have your Trans Tasman at home, to have everyone training and familiar with the venue and things like that. I think, yeah. But again, like this mixed Australia-New Zealand is never going to be a bad game. But that is my thoughts, immediate thoughts on the Trans Tasman coming up. So make sure to watch it. It'll be on YouTube, Sky, and all of those things. And thank you very much once again for watching. Really appreciate your support on the channel, and we'll see you at touch.